When I was 5 years old, I had this dream. And God, what was that dream? I had a stuffed rabbit, snowy bunny. And this stuffed rabbit was anthropomorphic. It was like a human body shape, with kind of feet and with a torso. Didn't have the whole rabbit thing going on. It had I never thought of him as like a short friend, but Snowy was my companion, my ally, my spirit animal. Snowy was like a constant in my life. Never let me down, Snowy Bunny. So what was I dreaming about when I was 5 years old? I was just having a blast with my imagination. It was the best playground. I had some pretty awesome nature spaces to mess around with, to explore, and the best time is when I would fuse the imaginary with the natural and run around in space while having this whole other layered, multi-dimensional experience in virtual reality. My virtual reality, which was all up here and out there in mind space. Mind space. So, thank you, Pi, for mind space. Now, he trademarked that word. He's very particular about making it clear. Some other things that, there's people who come along in your life who have an influence, and if you got to be careful, and you got to check other people's ego at the door to your sacred space, because sometimes people like to claim credit, to test those boundaries of claiming credit beyond where it's, I'll call it just and proper. And these are kind of like micro acts of colonizing your identity, certain foundations or critical pieces of who you are. It's part of building and maintaining power for some types of people or personalities or ways of approaching and making sense out of life to say, oh yeah, I helped you get there. Remember that. And I'm riffing a bit on an interaction and a type of dynamic that I have with someone. Maybe I'm taking some creative license here. Please don't be offended, but check your ego. And that's all I have to say about that. Now, I'm not here to tell you my life story. But I do have to give an obligatory plug for the HU Kitchen chocolates. These guys, I'll tell you what, they took their little chocolate chunks, that they call them gems. All right, first take a moment to appreciate these hexagonal chocolate gems. Now, the definition and clarity of that shot is not the point. I think you got the picture. They're little tiny, I can't remember, the light's, a tricky thing right here. They're little tiny gems. It's chunks of chocolate. But I'll tell you what, they took their little chunks of chocolate that they put inside some other products. The foundation of the HU, maybe they call it Hue, like human. Foundation of the Hue chocolate line. Oh, baking. And this is what they needed for their paleo pastries. But they were just snacking on them all day long. They're like, let's put these in a bag and sell them to people. Kitchen restaurant. They have a kitchen restaurant that they founded in 2012. I'm guessing in Austin. I don't know. But I thought their chocolates were produced over in Italy. But these ones say out of Austin. I don't know the story. Don't take my word for it. One of my favorite professors, Dr. Gildersleeve. Dr. Britton Gildersleeve. If you have the pleasure of working in the literature space in Oklahoma or around Oklahoma, or she may be virtual, if she's still professing, I don't know what Britton's up to, but she does writing classes for adults, people of all ages, and she did teach at the Oklahoma State University in 2009, at least. Pretty sure she was still there in 2015-ish, I think. Either which way, she would always say, don't take my word for it. Look it up. I think is look it up. If not, it sounds good, and it's in the ballpark of what she would say. I love her. I love her. Dr. Gildersleeve, Britton. Thank you. So that's good. That's all good. And that gem was bomb. So here's something interesting. In the social sciences, and I'm studying urban planning, that's a social science. But in most worlds of research, hard sciences must do this also. If they don't, then they're doing it wrong, because how are you building on the shoulders of giants, building on the shoulders of other how do we progress societally if we don't found our research from a perspective informed by the vetted research of others that's come before us? We can try something new, but you're not going to listen to your parents, your grandparents? You're not going to listen to the wisdom of the centuries of existence and exploration that got us to today? Yeah, it's that generational knowledge, exploration, that without which, if we were foragers, we'd be eating all the poison mushrooms. Like, oh, this thing looks interesting. I wonder what I can cook with this. And then you see that happen next door, and then you just do the same thing. Like, that's what we're doing when we ignore the foundations of research that has come before us. And this kind of successive building, brick by brick, is why I'm now able to sit here in Bridgeport, America, in Chicago, and in this point in time. And what does that mean to you? It just means that it came before, maybe, I don't know what time I don't know what technology you have access to. And so you can watch or whatever. You can engage with me out of sync. But we can vibe together. Life is interesting, huh? So, yeah. It'll come back to me if it's important. If not, just let it go. And so, here we are. I had this conversation. It wasn't even, okay, it was a conversation. I had this counseling session with a dear friend, Simon Hill. Love you, Simon. Now, Simon just asked me a question. It's like a 5-word question. What are you up to? How are things going? How have things been going? Something like that. One of those pleasantries. But Simon is a profound friend of mine, so I know that it's a genuine pleasantry. And I said, well, thank you for opening the door, Simon. Let me just walk right in and make myself at home. And I took my scarf off, and I sat down, I took my shoes off and kicked up on the couch and kicked back. And I went to town. Tell you what, I was here this was on Messenger, so it's metaphorical. I am I paint in metaphors, if you haven't noticed. It just makes the communication better. You say something like, but up, and then what? We're done? Okay. There's a time and space for that. At work, there is a time and space, and enough said. Next. Okay. So let's make this an email. So think about that one. So if you only knew. Now guilty, I must be guilty too. I try to do better in life as I go along. By the way, thank you Jerry Doyle for your mastercraft in email writing. See, so when I recognize an inferiority of where I'm at and where maybe I aspire to be, or what have you, I will do this. I'm very good at mirroring or mimicking, and sometimes I'll do it, I'm not even aware I'm doing it. So, for example, certain behaviors of speech, like, or being excited about something, trying to collect my thoughts and trying to map around this non-linear diagram, constellation of things, and saying like so like that kind of thing. So, but Jerry, I'll tell you what, does this thing with his emails, and he's like bit and space and bit space and bit space. These are like one sentence, sometimes not even a sentence. And oh my God, because I'll tell you what, I was writing novels, and you know, I just pray such blessings on everyone who tolerated my novels, and grace to you. And if you chunked them in the trash because I didn't give you a TLDR, no hard feelings. Following up on my previous novel, so those TPS reports, anybody, did you get to the 6th paragraph, 3rd sentence in? That was gold and very important for the work we're doing. And it was never like that, but it was like, here's an idea I've got. Let me take you on a journey. But what I do now is I'll go on that journey on my own. I've got my notebooks, I've got my sketchbooks. They're inside my bag. I'm not going to belabor this point long enough to unzip this thing and bust them out right now, but I sketch things out on my own, in my own time. And then when I go to the communications where I'm like, I really need someone to get what I'm communicating, I just list with brevity what are those key items. And sometimes, I deviate a little bit and go into some detail sometimes. But I'll tell you what, and that's something that I saw, and I'm like, I want to communicate like that. And so I just started doing it. I never signed up for the LinkedIn masterclass, though, Jerry, maybe there's something there. I don't know. There's something there. A post, if nothing else. Now, what I'm finding is that I'm trying too hard. So how have I been doing, Simon? The TLDR. If you got 20 minutes in here, quicker to read my couch post that I sent to you. But how much more enriching, though, is this experience? I have fun making fun of myself and my, like, self-love or ego or whatever, kind of like inflating it and then stepping outside of it and looking at that and just like having a chuckle because I know there are ways where my ego is big. Surely, I know. I'm trying to check those, and that's life will humble you. Well, may it humble you if it hasn't. But no, I get a kick out of you gotta have fun. That's the thing. And you gotta take risks. Maybe you don't know. It's one of my pet peeves of myself is that there's a space for that, but interjecting it between every fifth sentence as if it's like this filler word, but it's this subliminal, like, maybe I should know. So you know how this thing goes, you see? It's important in life. It's important when you're sitting in your car or sitting in some kind of space, just existing, wherever you're at, to hold space like a container. You can strategically wield time. And in so doing, you can create space. 3-dimensional space. I'm not quite getting into the art of like Dr. Strangecraft. I'm more talking about how to have small intentional moments of peace that can, in like glorious Princess Diana fashion, give you the space you need, if just enough. Just that other little fraction of a moment you need to recollect just a thought, just one little thought, not the whole thing. Forget about it. You gotta go on a meditation retreat for that sabbatical, God knows. But just that thought. Let's just start with the little string that you were just working with, and reframe it, and then when it comes time to, let's say you're trying to deliver spoken word, you can do so from a place of better perspective and confidence, and ultimately be more likely to achieve your desired outcome because you've given yourself a moment to just sit with it. If it's not about communicating something, maybe it's about where you want to go to get coffee in the morning. try this. Most of the time it doesn't work. In the morning I'm fuzzy and it's hard. It's really hard. But for example, you just sit rather than get in the car and turn it on. I've got a note here that popped up about like subways and buses and stuff. I'll come back to that. Biking. Oh, yes. Rather than getting in your car and turning it on, just driving, and then while you're driving, thinking, okay, where do I want to do? I want to go there? Do I want to go to that spot? I go there a lot. I want to mix it up. That's what I like. I like mixing it up. So take that moment before, just sit down, but before you turn it on, or if it's cold, yeah, turn it on. Get your music going and just sit for a moment. But don't get Tim Ferriss going, much less some of these other guys. I don't, to each their own, within reason, to each their own. Please, let's edify ourselves and each other. That's all I'll say about that. Nothing on Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss, older, younger Tim Ferriss. I would not want to do business. I mean, I wouldn't want to do business. Just forget about it. But now he's a little softer, a little more like, well, yeah, I have a big ego, but I could learn some things from some people who are not like me. I recognize that. That's like where he's at. And it's really cool to have seen his the softening of his heart. It's a process. It's a process. So if you don't know, that's fine. Moments. Now, the biking, train ride, bus riding, taking the transit is beautiful because you can kind of, you don't have to be on. You can just be. Rich people experiences with chauffeurs and stuff. And what we'll get over the next couple of decades is the autonomous experience, autonomous driving thing, where there's a Tesla, not necessarily autonomous, some of them are. So you get this dynamic where, what's a commute when you can you can plan things, you can have a whiteboard on your ceiling, map out the trip you want to take for summer, vacation, or whatever you want to do. You can build your business on your way to your work or something, I don't know. Write your book, Skype with your cat, or your nephew, or your mom, so you can do some really cool things. Whatever you want. What kind of experience do you want to have? It just so happens that you're having this experience inside a little container that's moving around. But it's doing its own thing. You don't have to be here. So there's that. And I was talking about containers earlier. But what I'm really talking about right now, what I'm really, really getting at, Simon, is I'm trying too hard. I'm trying to to do things that are like absurdly, beautifully utopian. But I'm trying to do it in a way where, and I've been doing this all of my life, is nothing new. And maybe that's all of our story. The things that we do that are like, maybe we don't even realize we're doing it, and is how we're defeating ourselves without even knowing it. We've been doing it the whole time. For me, it's that I'm trying to make things happen and use my perspective and my gifts and I'm not going to say my strengths, and I'll get to that, but I'm trying to wield myself as a kind of agent as an agent of utopia. I'm gonna frame it that way. I'm gonna leave it there. And that's interesting. But what I want to talk about here is process. Cass and some other I don't even know, but at the least Cass, whom I love and I hold dearly. Cass Wantland made fun of me from high school for that. I did these leadership things, held these leadership positions in high school where I found myself in front of groups talking a lot, which is a polar flip from when I was a freshman. I was like, but I'm still that way. Give me a job, and then I can activate the platform. But I'm an interesting social bear. I'll leave it at that. So, something to do with maybe something, I don't know, but it was in the process of, so that was my characterization, like a caricature sketch in a sense. So this is me, but I want to talk about the process. Big surprise. So, or the method. Utopia is an interesting. What does that mean? Interesting. So utopia has been wielded by planners who are like outside the world of planning. Who are these guys? But inside it's like, oh, well, of course we don't even need to mention their names. But it's like, huh? It's these venerated deified almost, in a sense, like with all the maybe fathers of planning or something. I don't know. And who is the mother? And what? So there are these people who had ideas about how the world should be ordered. And they saw how designated land use and coordinated planning on a city or regional scale could lead to the kind of places that are peaceful and desirable and Eden-like and would bring about some more beautiful existence for the people who are in those places. And so there's a lot of power to that kind of thinking, that, oh, we can transform our lived environment in order to achieve some kind of outcome, some kind of way of living that we want to have. I mean, that's powerful. And there's tools that we have to make that happen. Those professions and those tools and pathways and boardrooms and what have you have been gate kept to the wealthy, the white elite. But those barriers and those gates are coming down bit by bit by bit, and at a rate that's accelerating, which is cool to see. So, huzzah for the futures that we can bring about collectively, the equitable and just, beautiful world that we're building. Because what are we building here? We're doing something. A lot of times this country is called an experiment. Democracy is called an experiment, or our way of governing, democratic republic form of governance. It's called an experiment. Okay, an experiment to demonstrate that just is possible. It's possible for what? To what ends? Is it to an ends? Is it a way of being? It sure seems like a way. A way, an avenue, a method, a process. This idea of, oh, the garden city is like putting up on a pedestal this ideal way that our environment should be structured, and we have to achieve that. We have to do this whole process of terraforming our urban environments, displacing our most vulnerable populations. Hello, structural racism in planning. Not only do Black Americans get home from the war and not have access to the same benefits that your average white GI may, in order to build wealth, acquire a home, build generational wealth, and pass that down. And then when you've got your Black communities, say living in Chicago, what you end up seeing is between like the 50s and the 70s. This whole movement of tearing down the housing structures that they live in and have built society, ways of coexisting and working with each other within the bounds of this very oppressive and racist society. And what our planning departments came and did, and with the policy and financial incentive structure from the federal government to say, well, there's not really money for rehabbing spaces, but there's money for new construction. And so then we're tearing down all these places as a city formal, displacing the black populations to here and to there, and here's your housing vouchers, and then you ripping apart the social network, the fabric that you rely on in order to live and move about. And I watch your kids tonight and you watch my kids tomorrow, and that way we're able to manage the jobs that we need to have in order to support and in order to work in the system. And then you're like now living next to the Lithuanian immigrants who don't know you from their the roots in the ground or something, because they just got here, and like they're not lending you the whatever dollars that you need just to make the thing work. But you're used to kind of this exchange. When I got surplus, I give to you, and you got surplus, you give to me, and it's a fluid. That's the beauty of a social fabric, is that it facilitates the flow of energy across it. It's the threads you could imagine as they're strong because they are social capital. They are the trust that exists within a community, the mutual respect, the honoring of each other, the collective reason for existing, goals, shared visions, futures. Shared blood surely helps, but shared values and forms of love and respect are even more important. And when you pull apart the physical connections of people, you break down the ability for that system for energies or for things to flow across that fabric. And so it's much harder. I gotta UPS something to you, and that's like, I gotta go across town in order to, no, I gotta get to my job. I can't go across town. And so what are we doing? What are we doing as a city? What are we building? What kind of communities are we building? So this pursuit of a more ideal community has ripped community apart. And there are my God, there are communities, there are oppressed peoples, black and indigenous people of color, immigrant communities, identity, non-gender binary people who are outside of this kind of bubble, this perception of, okay, this is how maybe the world should look. If you're within the bubble, if you're white and you grew up around a bunch of other white people and those were your interactions, and otherness was outside of that bubble, and kind of like, oh, okay, Chris Rock, I saw him on the, Jackie Chan, and okay, there's Chris Tucker, okay. And so you got like this kind of, that's like your international thing. I'm talking from my 12-year-old self. That was it. I would mix up Chris Rock and Chris Tucker. Okay. And then it was Jackie Chan. And I had some friends who were into Chinese cinema. And I was like, whoa, what is this kind of international cinema going on? And there's so much cool stuff outside of and Netflix just really has opened that door, and that's terrific. So my little thing here is off to you, Netflix. Now, what we have is this idea of ideal place existing outside of where we're at right now. And what we have done on the city scale is rip apart usually the most vulnerable spaces and communities and peoples, and then try to kind of force the vision of that ideal reality, and it can get very brutal. And I know that, but I don't know the full truth of it. And that's humbling. So that way of approaching Utopia is off. So what does it look like for us to come together with a shared collective vision of where we want to go, and then work together to make that happen? And there's always going to be outliers who don't buy in and who don't agree. And that's the thing about building communities. You got to work with all types. And now the thing about mob rule democracy is a majority rules. If you disagree, you're out of here. Forget it. You're off to the island. We're going this way. The beauty of a republic, a democratic republic, is that the republic piece brings constitutional law, constitutional protections to ensure that certain rights, certain lines are not crossed. Just because 51% of the people want something doesn't mean that all those who are not in that camp are now, what, banished? You no longer have rights to your property because 50 plus one of us percents want we want a new mall over here, so we're not really going to pay you with just value either. No, that's why we have a constitution, is to protect minority interests from the whims of the majority. It's a key reason for it's important for it to keep. It's key. I am no constitutional scholar, though, so Obama, please help me out here. Or, it doesn't have to be Obama, but don't talk from your, be a scholar. You want to be a scholar, be a scholar. It's a responsibility to the truth and to justice. What does that look like? You tell me, scholar. Tell me. Show us. Show us the way. Show us the way. Now, what I could really use here is a drink. Just like a drink of water. Sometimes, like there's little like magical, like a little fairy dropped something under the seat, and it's like, okay, here's something, but this is like a jar of coconut oil. Because sometimes I eat coconut oil with my coffee for a type of bulletproof coffee experience. And a little, for me, it's like a teaspoon, couple teaspoons, and an espresso. That's where it's at. So, this idea about reaching for this ideal form is how I've been living my whole life. I try so hard to please people, to be this like person who doesn't stir the pot. Okay. To not offend you. I could try to not be weird, but forget it. I'm alive. Weird is what you're gonna get. So long as I come alive. See, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So the way that I'll do things is I'll have this kind of vision, and I'll say, wow, I want to be that, or like that, or build that, whatever it is. And I'll see myself as separate from it. And part of that is a power of my perspective. Like part of it, that's how I have some of the perspective that I have that's different than what's mainstream. Is I walk through life feeling like an outsider. And what I mean is that it's a really good question. See, now that's one for the real couch to unpack. So, put a bookmark in that one, because there's some depth there that I'm not going to cover in the next 2.5 minutes, which was hoping to close this out. So, I'll try to build something, but not for me. That's the crux of it. I do it for you. And in micro actions, I will go out of my way. I have. In order to not inconvenience you. Now, that way of thinking made me a really good servant in the sense of fine dining service, in the kind of classic idea of it. Okay. But in the sense of being a steward of civilization, which we all are, it's I'm missing something. I feel like I'm missing something else to unpack. Maybe it's so it gets hard to talk something out when, oh my God, the clock is getting close to an hour on this monologue. And I just gotta let that go. it gets hard to talk something through and to communicate a reality, a love, a passion, a vision, an intuition, a revelation, when you don't understand it. Can you navigate it front to back, blindfolded, walking backwards? The better you can do that, the easier it's going to be to talk about it on an elevator and have someone understand what it is that you're talking about. Like the full breadth. And as someone who has just come into this tonight, trying to connect these dots, I told you I wasn't going to tell you my life story. Did I lie? I didn't know, Your Honor. I was ignorant. I'm not going to apologize. I don't owe that to anybody. Jeez. You signed up for this. If you're still, I don't know where the clock is on this thing, but the time that you've invested, however long or little, has been your choice. Now that's an assumption. Oh, God. I hope it was your choice. I do hope that no one was compelled against their will to sit with me for whatever amount of time this has been. So it used to be that when my wife called while I was doing a movie thing, while I was recording a video, it would cut it off. But I'm sorry,